That would be better. My name is William Michael Donovan. I live on West Street between Linden and Turner. And my backyard faces the high school. And I would like to be the mayor that represents 118,000 people in the city. I was born outside of Boston, Massachusetts. My father owned a small store. I'm the first four-year graduate of my family. I went to a small college in Maine, like Muhlenberg, worked in Boston as a municipal banker for one of the nation's largest banks. Also worked as an international banker for that same bank. I brought the equivalent of $70 million of municipal bonds to market, and I dealt with millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in the foreign exchange market and the assets and liability management of the bank. I have an MBA with honors from Columbia University, and then I worked as an industrial engineer within a manufacturing company called Data General that built computers. I had a long career as a consultant and in economic development. In 1995, I became a teacher of business and economics at a community college, and it's important to say a community college, in Maine. And 9 years ago, I came down to join Cedar Crest College, which we have a graduate here, who was in my department where I teach business and economics. In 2007, I became a city councilman and was vice president for 2 years. But more important, I was the budget and finance chair for 4 years, and put in the first monthly financial reports, had the first time that the Budget and Finance Committee would meet monthly, and played a major role in identifying revenue shortfalls and other budget opportunities that we had, and sadly sometimes the things that I wanted to see could not get a second. I'll leave things like water and EIT and the incinerator and other topics for you all, but let me just say what my vision is. Nothing would make me happier than in 4 years, at the end of my first term, if you decide not to have me again, that I will have represented 118,000 people who cannot be ignored. We come from all walks of life, all nationality, races, creeds, religions, and that is vital. I would like to unleash a whole new generation of talent and leadership in the city and have them fill our very, very important offices and services for government and our public safety and our hospitals and our colleges. And I'd like to play a role in moving that forward. The community benefits agreement that I was the first person to advocate when the N.S.A. was being proposed, and I was on the Economic Development Council and advocated it from the beginning, but unfortunately one has not been developed, was part of my vision to recognize that projects like this, which I am extremely in favor of, you don't laugh at $500 million, ripples throughout the community in a way that benefits us in shared value. Our master plan ignores several key economic avenues in the city. It would be a high priority of mine to be looking at Hanover Ave, South 4th Street, Tillman Street, Union Boulevard. There's a lot of empty space out there, close to residential locations, and when you look at other cities around the country, that's a tremendous asset for appropriate development close to residences along those avenues. I actually said to the mayor 8 years ago that wouldn't it be nice if we recruited a large Latino multinational to be able to take advantage of our large bilingual population, which would immediately raise our median income. I also recommended it to the Economic Development Council. Now maybe there's been action on that, but I never saw it on council, nor have I seen it since leaving council. Not only would I be looking at small businesses and large businesses, but I have a very strong financial background. I understand some of the things that have gone on in our finances over the years. For example, $14 million surplus the mayor touts was borrowed money, and we now have a $700,000 deficit after 8 years in the general fund. Whoever is the new police chief, he or she, we have 4 he candidates, it will be very important to task that person to be implementing more modern neighborhood policing strategies that are found throughout the nation. I've been guided by several officers, retired and internally, to help me think through that and what's the opportunity. The police force needs to be looking at hotspot policing, problem-oriented policing, micro-policing, all the things that get to the problems in the city, but do not ignore the relationships that are vital to be developed with the neighborhoods. Some of you know I've outlined a 6-point plan to bring the city and the school department closer. A mayor has a moral obligation in a system which has only a 62% graduation rate at Allen and a 75% graduation rate at Durham, to be looking in whatever ways possible across the spectrum to bring the city and school together to improve the educational and learning opportunities for all of our citizens. I will also place great emphasis on English as a second language. For the last 2 summers I've taught in Ukraine, teaching English as a second language. I know how hard it is to learn a second language. I do not speak a second language. But the value of our population will increase tremendously across the board if we place more emphasis on that and put the resources to it. You probably will have questions concerning the N.S.A, water, Delta Thermo, and others. I applaud the mayor in the project on the N.S.A. Pat Brown and Jen Van brought it to him, and council and we voted it in. My main criticism over the years, and he knows that, is that we have not properly assessed a community plan for this. I also feel, it's been a concern, and he's heard me say this, that over 8 years, every year on council, and Mrs. Eichenwald knows this, I asked, where's the community plan? And I never heard one, and I have not heard one since. So I'll welcome your questions. I think we have a choice. The mayor is a very talented individual, has a lot of experience, has a lot of things to point to. I think that we differ a bit in style and substance. He's a good person, and I think he works very hard. He wants to be governor, and that's fine. Try and run for 2 things at once, that's great. It takes a lot of effort. I wish him luck on that. So thank you very much.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ed Pawlowski. I've been mayor of the city of Allentown for the last 8 years. I'm very proud of our accomplishments that we've accomplished over the course of the last 8 years. When I came into office 8 years ago, it was a very different city than it is today. We were like every other Rust Belt city in the Northeast and Midwest. Our population was declining. Our finances were in shambles. We were on the brink of bankruptcy. We weren't seeing any economic development or growth in any sector of the city. 8 years later, and you can all attest, it is a very different city than it was 8 years ago when I first came in. We went from a situation where we had multi-million-dollar deficits. We now have multi-million-dollar surpluses. We solved our pension problem, which is something that no other city in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has done. Very few in the country have done, in a very creative way, regionalizing our assets and our water and sewer, being able to monetize that asset, and using that money to fully fund our pension fund, which will then lower our cost year after year after year and stabilize our finances for many years going out, without having to put that burden on you, the taxpayer. Because if we would have had to raise taxes, we would have been looking at somewhere between 100 to 150% increase, depending on how we would do it. If we wanted to actually eliminate our unfunded liability, like we're doing with the dollars that we have been able to pull together regionalizing this asset, it would have been 150 to 175% tax increase, which you could not bear, the citizens of the city could not bear, the small businesses of the city could not bear, and would have driven homeowners and businesses out of the city in droves. So we did the responsible thing in being able to lower our costs, being able to solve a problem for the long term, and address this massive pension liability in a way that now is getting us national acclaim. Our crime rate has gone down 6 straight years in a row. We still have a long way to go, but we have seen close to a 30% decrease in crime, both Part 1 and 2 crimes over the course of the last 6 years. 6 straight years in a row, year after year after year. If you look at the federal and state statistics, we have gone down. This year is no different. And I credit that because we've been able to build up this great police force that is now more diverse than it's ever been. It's a younger force. It is a force that has a lot more energy to take on the problems that exist within our communities, and it's shown every day. I see the progress that's being made across the city. In fact, Part 1 crimes, which is our most egregious crimes, has gone down significantly in many, many areas. Robberies, burglaries, homicides have decreased almost in half over the course of those last 6 years. So we have seen a tremendous decrease in crime. We've put more police on the streets. We've been able to garner 2 federal grants, which is unique for a city our size. The only one that has more police that they've been able to get through the COPS program is the city of Philadelphia. We have been able to secure 20 additional police officers paid free of charge for 3 years, full freight. Their benefits and their uniforms and everything are paid for through a grant from the federal government and from the Obama administration. And we were able to secure 2 of those grants as a result of some very good work on the part of our City Hall staff. 20 new officers have hit the street as a result of it. We now have more officers on the street than we've had in the last several decades in the city of Allentown. We've rebuilt our police department. We were faced with a pretty dire circumstance. When I first came in office, we lost almost 2/3 of our entire police department due to an early retirement. And we've been able to not only rebuild, but retrain and hire additional officers as a result of that. And I think we have one of the best police departments now in the state of Pennsylvania, bar none. We put more technology on the street. We have more cameras now. We have over 128 cameras, more cameras than any other city outside of the city of Philadelphia. Those cameras have made a tremendous impact in crime. I can tell you that every time we put up a camera, we see anywhere from a 10 to 40% reduction in crime as a result of that. Those cameras being put up, and I see the result of that because everybody wants a camera now on their block in their community. And we have been able to secure grants and federal funds to help not having to put that burden again on you taxpayers. $79 million of new of grant dollars from the state and the federal government have come in and been secured over the course of my administration in the last 8 years. And those grant dollars that have come in from the state and the federal government have kept your tax dollars down and helped us to pay for repair of bridges, for new roads, for new cameras, for new technology in our police vehicles and our fire vehicles, for new equipment. All that is being done at a time when most cities are moving backwards, we're moving forwards. We also have $1 billion of new development in the city of Allentown. My opponent says that it was handed to me by Jennifer Mann and Pat Brown. That was a joint effort that we worked on together to try to bring in this new development. And we crafted legislation, looking at legislation from all over the country. We were able to pull some ideas in from other southern states that had a similar type of zone, put that into legislation, which was actually, we worked on very hard to pass 3 times through both the House and Senate, signed by 2 different governors, that allows us to capture those state taxes and keep them here for the benefit of us, residents of the city of Allentown, for many, many years, for the next 30 years. It has spurred $1 billion of new development, over 1 million square feet of new office space. Several thousand new jobs are coming in, corporate headquarters, jobs that will have an impact on this community for many, many years to come. And jobs that are helping to spur new taxes. Because what people don't realize is all these new buildings, except for the arena itself, is on the property tax rolls, which means that there'll be more taxes generated for the city that will help us to get more police officers, improve our roads, improve our parks, without, again, having to put that burden on you, the taxpayer, by increased property taxes. We also have, if you calculate out just the buildings that are there today, and remember, there's 5 or 6 more that are on the drawing blocks that are to be built over the course of the next couple of years. We are having economic synergy that's having ripple effects throughout the entire region, and helping our school district at the same time. That's the one thing that we can do. As mayors, we have no control over the school district in any way, shape, or form. But what we can do is bring economic development and economic synergy back to the city so that we can help them to increase their revenue sources, to help hire more teachers, educate our kids, keep our kids in good schools, and make sure we have a proper amount of teachers so that we don't have these overcrowding that's happening within our classrooms. That has been done through the NIS. By 2015, the school district will see $6.5 to $7.5 million of new tax revenue. That's a lot of tax revenue, folks. And that's going to be for the next 30 years. Actually, it's going to be for perpetuity, which will, if you calculate that out, will be hundreds of millions of dollars of new tax revenue coming into the Allentown school system to help our school system to hire more teachers, to make sure we have the ability to pay for improvements within our physical infrastructure within those schools, as well as maybe even hire some teachers back to reduce class sizes. The NIS is also helping to create economic synergy throughout the entire region. Thousands of jobs are being created on the construction side, and not just for Allentown, but for folks all over the region. We have 5,000 tons of steel that's going into these buildings, 5,000 tons, all coming from the city of Erie, being made in Pennsylvania in the city of Erie. If you put that steel back to back, it would be 75 miles long of steel. It's a lot of steel. And it's being made here, and it's not only helping our economy, but helping another city's economy all the way on the other side of the state. 36,000 cubic yards of concrete are going into these buildings, being made here in Lehigh County and in Berks County. Again, helping the economies of these entire regions as we build out the infrastructure of the city of Allentown. And this year, we have 4 bridges under construction, the only federally funded bridge in the state of Pennsylvania, a brand new one that we've talked about for almost 50 years. I think it goes probably even more than that, 60 years. I think they've been talking about, I saw an article from 1950 when they were talking about the American Parkway Bridge. As you all know, there's a 4-lane road, on one end, stops the Ukrainian Club. There's another 4-lane road in back of Coca-Cola Park, and it's been sitting there as a 4-lane road for decades upon decades. It is now going to have a bridge. It's going to connect the 2 roads together. It's being built right now as we speak and will be done by next year. We're finishing the 15th Street Bridge, finishing the Elbert Street Bridge, the Union Street Bridge, these major infrastructure projects which we needed to address for years and years and years. Building a new fire station on the city's east side. Built new parks out. We built a park, we rebuilt the playgrounds at Franklin Park, at Valania Park, at Bucky Boyle Park. We rebuilt new playgrounds at Keck Park. We rebuilt new playgrounds down in Cedar Beach. We have the first handicap accessible playground ever in the state of Pennsylvania, here in Allentown. 50,000 square foot park, which kids from all over the city and all over the region are coming to. We're building out our infrastructure in many ways, and this year, when I present my budget to City Council, it will be the 9th straight year of no property tax increase in the city of Allentown. I think that's a pretty good track record. Now, we have still a long way to go, folks, and there's a lot to accomplish, but we are working on it, and that's why I'm running for my 3rd term. I'm running to keep the progress moving forward, to keep us as a city moving forward, and I'd appreciate your vote on November 5th. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna open it up for questions. I want to start out with a question that I have. Earlier, when Mr. Garidi was here, he had mentioned, Dr. Spencer had asked a question about public safety. One of the questions that we had was about increasing number of police officers, and also there was a second question about, although I believe I heard you make the statement that the diversity of the police force is at an all-time high, we're still looking to improve the diversity of the police force. So if you could answer that question about police officers.
Well, we've added a tremendous amount. We've hired under my administration close to 80 new officers over the course of the last several years. We've trained these new officers. We've put those officers on the street. As I said, we have 2 federal grants. We're the only city in the Commonwealth to receive 2 COPS grants in a row. We have 20 additional officers on top of that. Some of them are being trained now. They'll go on the streets. We have the highest number of patrol officers that we've had in the last several decades. And it's making a difference. Our crime, as I said, is going down year after year after year. We still have a long way to go. But I can tell you that it is having an impact within our communities. I see it in my own community. I live right on 11th and Linden Street. And I see it in my own community every day, and the impact that those officers are having within the neighborhoods is significant. And I look at those statistics every day, and I can see that they are on top of issues. We got great new officers. We have a new officer that it was a purse snatching, and this is a story that really touched me. It was a purse snatching about 6 or 7 months ago. An elderly woman, somebody stole their purse, and they recovered the purse. And the officer, just a patrol officer, took it out himself. He actually found a receipt, a McDonald's receipt in the purse. And he asked this elderly woman, he said, did you go to McDonald's this day when your purse was stolen? She said, no, I never go to McDonald's. I don't like McDonald's. So he took it upon himself to follow up. He went to that McDonald's, he looked at the timestamp. Believe it or not, the guy who stole the purse actually went through the drive-thru and ordered a cheeseburger. And he was able to get the video of the individual, which they then used to catch the individual who stole the purse. Now that's good police work. And that's police work that's happening every day with our new officers. That's helping to really decrease crime with our communities. On the point of diversity, we have striven to really improve and hire more Latino and African American officers, as well as folks of Arab descent, Syrian descent, because we have a large Syrian population here as well. We need folks to speak Arabic. And so we've been working to diversify our police force. I think we've done a good job. We've got a long way to go. As you know, we have a number of candidates. One of them is African American. I made sure, I reached out, I told, as we got into this search for a new police chief, that I wanted to make sure that we had real diversity represented in that search. And we pushed hard to make sure that we got the best qualified candidates from across the country. And I'm going to tell you that I am now finalizing down to the next round here of several candidates. And Joe Fitzgerald, who is African American, is in that final round. So I have not made a decision yet on who the next police chief will be. That'll be in a few weeks after we actually have the second interviews and do the whole final background checks. But it is my commitment from the top down to make sure that we look to diversify our police force. We've done that also in the fire department. We just had a fire award ceremony the other day. I was very proud of the fact that as I looked out into the fire department ranks, that I now see black and brown faces in those ranks. That was not the case when I entered this mayor's job 8 years ago. So we're making progress. We still have a long way to go, but a lot of these positions, people, they get in these public positions, they stay there for a while, as you know. So as these positions open up, we're making aggressive efforts to really diversify our department. Can I just see one more women on diversity, and then I'll let we've also taken a number of efforts on a number of different fronts. Contracting, for example. When I came into office, there were no WB and MBE requirements at all in the city of Allentown. We put those into place. We make sure that every contract, if there's a subcontractor now in the city of Allentown, they have to aggressively seek out and document that they have sought out WBE and MBE contractors. We monitor them for that. We make sure that they get a list. We work with LVDC, Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation, to put together a list of qualified minority firms that they could tap into, and it has made an impact. We also, we wrote this NIS, okay? We made sure, and it was specifically, something that I wanted. I wanted to make sure that even though we had no requirement to have minority participation, no requirement to make sure that we had local jobs, no requirement to make sure that we used products made here locally in the state of Pennsylvania, we put that into the guidelines. And so we have a requirement that 20% of all the contracts in the NIS have to be WB or MBE. And we monitor that every single month to make sure that that's the case. And I can tell you, I was down in Philadelphia today trying to recruit more folks up into some specialized fields like engineering and architecture and others to make sure that we have those qualified firms. Because they're there, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not right here in the Lehigh Valley. But they are out there, and we want to make sure that we get them into our system so that they can be utilized going forward in the future. So thank you very much.
Jane, can I follow up to your question before Mike answers his?
Okay, but quick, I want to make sure I want to give my people time.
But yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about the dialogue that we're having tonight. A lot of it focuses around this public safety issue. Now granted, I think Allentown has been unfairly targeted as a high crime area, which it's really not.
Okay.
And one of the issues is that we know that the crime is specific to a 5 or 6 block radius, and we know what the issue is, but unfortunately it's permeated into the rest of the city. So this whole dialogue about increasing police force is a little bit troubling, because that's exactly how we got into the problem we had with the pensions, which led to selling the water authority. So I'm a little concerned that we're over-focusing on that particular issue of public safety, because I want to say that I think the economic development has been more effective in reducing the crime than over-hiring police and getting to that same issue again. So I just wanted to have them discuss that while they talk about the increase of public safety.
I think we'll have Mr. Donovan answer the same question and also answer that as well. Mr. Donovan?
Mr. Pawlowski had a lot of different topics, all of which are standard operating procedure, in the sense that when I was on council, it took a long time, we were pushing, and Mr. Garidi and I and Mr. Lackaval and others were pushing all the time for diversity issues. And you have to remember, while he was not mayor, he was the Economic and Community Development Director for the city, and which I would expect that those things might have been pushed while he was there, including the fact that he was the Economic and Community Director when the pension deal went through. And when I was an economic development director, I would have been screaming like crazy when I saw the pension deal that was struck. And from what I understand, it took 9 months for my opponent to leave the city. I would have left the next day and started screaming, because I would have known it would bankrupt the city. I understand that with the drop, which was a deferred retirement plan, which kept about, I may be wrong on this number, about 15 officers in the city, they'll be leaving at the end of the year. And I heard the mayor talk about that there are people in the pipeline, but that means we're not going to get an increase. Plus, grants run out. Grants run out. So, from the point of view of standard operating procedure as a manager, succession planning should have been in place so that we don't have all of our senior management leave at once. We should, I believe, should be able to bite the bullet and ask ourselves, what do we want to put our money into, which may include permanently funding a police force to get to an appropriate level, and not just chasing grants, which means leadership in the saying of, well, what can we afford? The mayor did raise taxes over the years. He put the LST in place, which was $52 a year. He also raised the EIT, surreptitiously saying that Act 205 was justifying the entire $10 million, but really only about $3 million was justified by Act 205, and the rest of it was case law, which was never really discussed. And it took me 4 months to get the appropriate documentation to show that only $3 million out of the $10 million was justified by Act 205. And we had an article on Sunday in which said, well, the tax may not go back to the residents and to the commuters that are being taxed. And yet, what was being discussed back then? So, from the point of view of being able to afford to grow the force, and every day looking at the fact that we are 118,000 diverse individuals, it is, you heard me say earlier, it's my goal to totally unleash new, young, excited talent in the city where the doors are not closed. I came here 9 years ago, and the doors were closed. Organizations I was in, senior people who talked, used terminology that really disgusted me. And here we are 8 years later, in which you go through a lot of institutions in this city, and we have a problem with the fact that everyone looks like me. I've been shaking hands at the elementary school over the last several weeks. My kids are all grown up, 29 and 24. They're scattered around the world. I've traveled through the Far East. I've traveled in Europe. You know, you have to figure out in this world there's lots of different people. And this police force, this fire department, this ambulance, this school system, this county, this city, these hospitals, these colleges, really have to recognize that it's time to enter the 21st century. This is my attitude. This is my behavior. This is what I think is important in addition to buildings. Buildings are important. I have an MBA with honors from one of the best business schools in the country. I've worked for one of the largest banks in the country. I worked for one of the best computer companies until it got bought up. There's nothing that I can't do or understand what's being done in terms of, the mayor talks about the N.S.A, I convinced the Economic Development Council to spend the $100,000 because no one around the table wanted to do it, they didn't really understand it. So economics, off the board, community is important. Stabilizing our neighborhoods, and part of that is a diverse police force. Part of that is a diverse fire department. Part of that is a diverse ambulance force. They are our touch points in the community. You will build trust. You will build trust such that people will finally feel that they can go out and look for jobs. They will feel like learning is important and they can get something. When I was 6 years old, Mr. Cusick, 60, 65, 70, I don't know, he was old, brought me to my parents and said, "Can I take Michael down to the library?" He saw I was a curious person, I like to read. I never looked back, there were not many books in my family. There have been times I've almost quit in my life because of mishaps and disappointments. There have been times where, as an Irishman in Boston, I've been ridiculed, and it hurt. I felt proud of my Irish heritage, but it hurt. I can't imagine what it must be like to live in Allentown and hear the things that I often hear. There will be a change in City Hall, not in economics, not in business planning, not in investment, rates of return. I believe I can make a greater rate of return for the developers because I understand community better than my opponent. So there are a variety of things. So from a police point of view and diversity point of view, I do believe that we need more. The pension deal is a travesty. At the last moment, the 30-day thing was put in. That was unethical on both sides. And people have heard me say that for 8 years. But we can move beyond that. And the final point saying that, yes, LCA was a better deal than corporate purchase of water. However, I believe, and former controller Bill Hoffman believes, and others believe, that a water authority would have given us a little less money, yes, for a kind of fun project, but would have kept the water here. You notice how I just listened for a long time? I listen. Thanks.
I know it's not debate, but he made accusations that I think I should have at least a million.
That's fine. Do you want to hear the response?
No, it's not a debate.
It's not a debate. Okay, question. You have a question? Different question?
I have a question.
Sure.
I am a native-born Allentonian, Mayor, and at the time when I was growing up, African Americans had their own businesses right outside here on Union Street. We had our own hotels, we had our own barbershops, we had our own cleaning businesses and stores and etc. And it was but the reason they were housed outside on Union Street was because we could not move our businesses above 5th Street. Now you have this new dream that is in the working, and my question is, how many businesses are going to be within that mall of your new arena that will be owned by African Americans?
I think many, if they have a business. I mean, there's going to be opportunities on many different fronts for businesses to move in, whether they're African American, Latino. We're also working on the 7th Street corridor. We've worked with a number of businesses to provide small business loans as well, hooking them up from the SBA, and working with those minority businesses to expand. And we'll continue to do that. So there'll be a number of businesses that'll be there, but they're going to have their businesses. You can't just make a business out of nothing.
No, you can't.
Okay?
No.
You have to have a person who has a business and has the ability to run that business. And we continue to work with them. I hired Dwayne Tulson, who is African American. Dwayne's job is to work with those businesses, to help nurture those businesses, hook them up to programs, be an ombudsman, if you will, to shepherd them through not only our process in City Hall, but also process at the other economic development agencies that exist throughout the region. I am going to respond to a couple of things that my opponent said. First off, if you don't want, I'd be more than happy. I mean,
It's okay.
I won't respond if you don't want. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do we have another question? We're trying to get, we have limited time, so if there's a question, could, you know, I don't want to monopolize all the questions. There was a question earlier, the mayor, that maybe either the mayor or Mr. Donovan can talk to, or both, about the incinerator project. There's some concern about the project, what the status is, what's going on. Is it safe for the
Yes,
for the
absolutely.
residents?
We wouldn't propose it for the safe. It's not an incinerator, it's a waste energy plant. Basically, this has been mischaracterized in a number of ways. But let me tell you what it is. We have a problem here in Pennsylvania. The problem is called landfills. Our landfills are filling up at an enormous rate. New York State actually has closed all its landfills. New Jersey has limited the amount of waste that can be dumped in landfills. We have basically 20,000 tons of garbage a day, 20,000 tons coming over the border into Pennsylvania every single day, filling up our landfills. Now, that's from New York City. That's just one city. It's not counting Newark, it's not counting all the other cities that are also shipping garbage across the border into Pennsylvania, into our landfills. What is happening? Our landfills are filling up at an astronomical rate, which is why you see in the paper, if you're paying attention, and you're watching the news, you're seeing landfill after landfill trying to expand now, because there's just no capacity left. What is going to happen? Well, we have a problem here with our city and with every other city here on the Northeast. What's going to happen is it's going to cost more and more and more and more to keep getting rid of our garbage. We create close to 100,000 tons of garbage every day. It's small potatoes compared to New York City, which I said creates 20,000 tons of garbage. If you go up to I-80, if you look at I-78, you will see hundreds upon hundreds of trucks hauling garbage from New York City and New Jersey into Pennsylvania, into our landfills here. So we have a real dilemma happening over the course of the next basically 10, 15, 20 years. As our landfills start to fill up, we have to truck that garbage from here further and further away. Obviously, that's not good for the environment. It creates more carbon emissions. It costs more money. Our tipping fees go higher and higher and higher. That's the price we have to pay to put it into a landfill. Our transportation costs go higher and higher and higher. And the cost to you, the consumer, will go higher and higher and higher. And so we need to look at innovative ways, basically, to get rid of this garbage. What this is a very innovative way. We are now on the cutting edge. We're trying to figure out ways to really lead the way, instead of just following, trying to lead the way than other cities have not done, in trying to figure out alternative ways to not only get rid of our trash, but also create energy. And so what this does is taking three different pieces of technology and putting them together in a very unique format. There's a piece of Japanese technology, which has been very proven and tested. There's a piece of German technology that has been very proven and tested. There's a piece of South Korean technology, I'm sorry. North Koreans don't really have technology. South Korean technology that's been very proven and tested. And I think they have analog computers still, so what we're doing is they're bringing these pieces of technology together. And so what they're doing is the garbage will come in. It would be like a giant pressure cooker that breaks it down at a molecular level and into a pellet, a fuel, if you will. That pellet will then be utilized and to generate energy, burned to generate energy. So we didn't do this blindly. We didn't do it without a lot of study and a lot of input. We hired some of the best engineering firms around to work with us to review this technology. We had an RFP process for other types of technologies that were out there. We hired at our own cost an engineer from Lehigh University, the professor who was the chair of the engineering department, to actually go over to Germany and some other countries to look at this technology and come back and write a report, who said this is very innovative. It would be on the cutting edge of being able to not only dispose of your waste, municipal waste, but also to be able to generate electricity. We then embarked in a scenario with them where we would basically give them our municipal waste. Okay, we have a contract with a waste hauler right now. We guaranteed them our municipal waste for a period of years. In exchange, they were going to guarantee us electricity to pay for our whole water and sewage treatment plant, the cost of that, as well as reduce our tipping fees and stabilize our tipping fees for many, many years to come. I think it's a good deal. Now, this has to go through a lot of different departments. It has to be approved by the DEP. It has to be approved by the EPA. They have to go through very extensive review. They also got grants, federal grants, from the Department of Energy, who likes this concept and is looking at it as a very innovative way. If this technology works, great. We will reduce our costs dramatically and stabilize our tipping costs for many years to come. And they have also agreed that as the technology, if this technology is successful, they will build the component parts for the technology that they're going to be selling to other cities of our size across the country here in the city of Allentown, creating more jobs for our residents. I think it's a good deal.
Okay.
And so, you know, if it doesn't work, we just go back. We don't lose out on anything. We go back to basically tipping in the landfill. But I'm going to tell you, that's only a short-term solution to a very long-term problem. And we're going to need to come up with alternatives to just dumping trash into the ground because we cannot sustain this going forward in the future.
Mike, can we ask Mr. Donovan to comment on the same question?
In my career, I've read a lot of business plans. And I was one of the first council people, along with former president of council, Michael DeMore, that met with one of the principals. It was one of the worst business plans I've ever read for something that was allegedly such a great technical breakthrough. What was interesting was, I'm someone who believes in technical breakthroughs, and you have to take a risk. My question was, should Allentown be taking that risk? Especially with something that was not that well presented. Several times it came to council, and council dismissed it, said we did not want to do it. And then, after several people who did not want to do it left, and there were several appointees on council, suddenly it was brought forward again. It was first voted down and then brought forward again. Now, I've also looked at the financial justification that the mayor speaks to as far as with what the city will make of it, and it was based on my financial experience, something that I was off council by then, would have wanted more detail. And something that I've always felt that really has disappointed me during my time on council and Senate. Dissent is a critical part of a democracy. Dissent. The ability to allow individuals, lay people and experts, to be able to critique a project. And over and over and over again, with the Delta Thermal as being one of them, in my opinion, based on my experience of what is civic engagement, what is proper civic engagement, that did not occur. I'm still not convinced the technology will work. I'm always open to it, but nothing that was ever presented to me, with my experience, convinced me. The individual that was sent overseas was an expert, but only an expert in one part of the technology. And I think it's very, I find it that taking risks is an extremely important thing. My opponent likes to say he takes risks. I do believe that. But you know, risks require you to listen to the potentials of what might go wrong. We have a 35-year contract. To simply say it's going to go away if it doesn't work, that's something that I, kind of, once you build that thing and it's there, you know what's going to happen. So I was against it from the beginning. I was never convinced. I feel that the way it kept being pushed through and brought back was a mystery to me. And I also was disappointed in terms of when people tried to come forward and tried to say we would like to have a say in this, and experts would like to have a say, they really weren't listened to, in my opinion. And that is my opinion, obviously. But I was trained by the same people who trained George Mitchell and his individuals to go to Northern Ireland and help resolve the Protestant-Catholic fight. I believe in civic engagement that's proper, that's open, that's transparent. And I don't believe the Delta Thermal deal was ever that way. Thank you. I don't know if I have a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead, question?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just have a question, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Fran Eddings, and I own a science, technology, engineering, art, and math program. I've looked into thermodynamics, I looked into, and I researched, and I'm well aware of alternative energy. What it seems to me that's on the table here is just, not that it's a good plan, but that it wasn't a plan that was inviting from the community and was accepted from the community. And that's what I hear you saying. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a plan that is not advantageous to the community or will work in the best interest of the community. You have a landfill. It's got to be filled. I do believe that the community should be and does have a vested interest in this project. So my question to you is why you don't agree with the project at hand. What would you do to embrace, act collectively, and with the entire community of Allentown, what would be your solution to get the community on board so that they thoroughly understand what thermodynamics and alternative energy is?
For projects like this, and they're having trouble getting financing, and yet the structure of the deal, as I understand it, is they will make some money on us. But then if they're able, if it works, and they're able to market it around the country and sell it, it's almost like a franchise agreement, the way it was originally explained to me. They would sell it to others. That's a pretty interesting venture capital concept. So I'm agreeing with you. If it's a great technology, that's fine. It's a very, like I just said, if this thing were to work and really have merit, it should be attracting so much private capital. And throughout these discussions, and so from my perspective, I would not have just hired a local engineer in one particular part of the field. I really would have been going to a variety of experts about this, say, wow, I would shop this around. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Do you agree? And I would have gone, venture capitalists, they're specialists in their field. And yet this firm is still struggling to get money, with most of it coming from state grants and other things. And even the former governor, when it was presented on the, when the group that was trying to get the referendum was going to the county, suddenly a letter from former Governor Rendell came. So you have to wonder how much of this is political. When you're talking about a new technology that is a game changer, when you're talking about the amount of money that perhaps could be involved, when you're talking about a business plan that says, we're going to sell this around the country, I certainly would have said, wow, that's great, but I would have followed a totally different path that was much more in terms of what I've been trained and experienced to do in terms of bringing new technology to market.